Yeah, so you were saying
So,
about my tournaments.
right, have you played in any since the Banff Open?
Um, let's see here. Well, aside from
Remember?
just my just the weekly club events, which there's honestly not too much to discuss there. Like you know,
Okay. Are
I,
you
I
winning
lost
those
a lot.
games? Or
Well, I lost like one game in the last like five club games, but aside from that, it's
okay.
it's just hard to gain rating at these events. Just gotta wait for the next bigger next weekender.
Yeah, for sure, for
Aside from
sure.
that, I've
And you
been
don't have too
definitely
many of those where you're at, probably. You
I
might need to
definitely
travel a little bit.
felt burnt out. Yeah, I mean at my club, yeah, there's only a few guaranteed every year. I guess I am technically doing a weekender, but it's more like a team format. It's gonna be a five rounder though in next week.
Okay. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
that sounds like a pretty big thing. It's like in the States here, in February, there's going to be the US Amateur Team North, where
yeah,
you make a team of four players and you compete against another team of four.
yeah. This for us, it's
Is
a
it kind
team
of
of
like that?
three. It's a team of three, and
Okay.
the average rating has to be under 2,000 or under. So
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna be
yeah.
on board one on my team, and I have a couple of friends of mine.
All right, yeah, that's fun. I always
Yeah,
like those tournaments, and I'm gonna go to the U.S. one in February with with a friend of mine and with two of my students. Actually, we're gonna try to have a
right.
crushing a killer team, a super hot top heavy team with basically three masters and then one like
Yeah,
1600.
but this one is going to be very good
And
for rating because I am going to be playing like a lot of masters because they're all going to be on board
good.
one, right?
Yeah, sweet. Okay.
Hopefully at least.
A lot of responsibility with you being the board one, right? You got to
Yeah.
try to carry. You're
Yeah.
gonna be playing some strong players, but all right.
Mhm.
Um, So, okay. Last time we had a lesson, like a month ago, we're working more on calculation, but also evaluation, right?
Mhm.
And because what I've started to realize is that I think the biggest thing that you need to work on is actually being able to correctly evaluate positions because there's no use in being able to calculate something if you're not able to correctly evaluate it, right? You'll end up discarding lines that are good for you and going for lines that are actually bad for you.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so what I wanted to do today was work on your evaluation, but not getting into so many like super deep calculations, but more just where you need to yeah, I guess not as quite as deep of calculations, but you just need to like find the right idea and be willing to evaluate your different options, even the ones that
Yeah.
at first sight might not seem so good, but could actually be quite good. So this isn't actually one of the positions.
Okay. Oh, really?
Before we look at
Okay.
any positions, I wanted to talk about the different things that you should evaluate a position based off of. Right. Of course,
Hmm.
there's tons of different imbalances in chess that you can use to evaluate a position. And there's like two main categories of imbalances, right? There's static imbalances that are kind of long-term aspects of the position. And then there are dynamic imbalances, which are more short term and they're more fleeting. And if you don't make use of the dynamic advantage right away, it might be lost.
Right.
And one thing that I think you have a tendency to do is to evaluate positions too much on the static factors and not enough on the dynamic factors.
Hmm.
And I think like you can give your opponent a bad pawn structure, right? Leave them with doubled isolated pawns and say,
Hmm.
aha, I have the better pawn structure, therefore I'm better. But
Hmm.
you're maybe disregarding some of the more dynamic factors that make up for that. So things like that. So I'm going to just try to challenge you today to consider not just the static factors in the position, but also the dynamic things.
Right.
So can you name a couple static imbalances in chess?
Like not just like you mean mostly
Or
pawn
just
structure
static
wise
factors
or
in
anything,
yeah, pawn structure. That's a big one, right?
or
A pawn
also
structure is usually pretty static.
I guess um I guess peace imbalances are more about dynamic, more related to
Also,
dynamic
a material
factors.
imbalance is pretty static, right? If you have
Material imbalance,
the
yeah, yeah,
bishop
of course.
pair, that's usually a fairly long-term advantage. If you have
Yeah.
knight against bishop, or if you have like the two minor pieces versus rook and two pawns, right? Material
Hmm.
imbalances are generally pretty static too. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, those are the biggest ones in my mind: pawn structure and
Hmm.
then material imbalances. Along with pawn structure comes like space, right? Usually one player has a space advantage. Um,
Yeah, I'm generally on the
and
side of, yeah, I prefer space,
mhm.
obviously. Yeah, but
Right. Space. I mean, I think most people do. Usually, having more space is makes things easier, right?
mhm.
You have more mobility, and generally, you want to play on the side where you have more space, right? And then, what are some dynamic factors?
Dynamic factors, yeah, king safety is obviously a big one.
Mhm, for sure.
Um, Also what you mentioned before about not necessarily material imbalances, but piece imbalances, like knight pair versus bishop pair in a certain position. Depending on whether position is closed or open, it can favor one side or the other.
Right.
Also,
I would say that's more of a
piece
static thing.
activity,
It can change, of course, right? But usually, those types of imbalances are long term.
yeah, like piece mobility activity.
Piece activity, or if you have a lead in development, or if you're behind in
Yeah, yeah.
development, right? Or if you have superior piece activity
Hmm.
or inferior piece activity. Those are all advantages or disadvantages that are temporary.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if you have that advantage, you need to act quickly with it, right?
Hmm.
And that brings me to the other point I wanted to make, or the other thing is initiative, right? I would consider initiative to be an important dynamic factor, right? Of course, you want to be the player with the initiative, you want to be pulling the punches. And so that's another thing when you're evaluating a position, right? You should come to a conclusion of who has the initiative in this line, right? Um, so just I can expand my screen share. Those are the basic things that I had written down here, and there are more, right? Of course, there are more static factors, there are more dynamic factors, but these are probably the most important ones to pay attention
Hmm.
to when you're evaluating a position. Um, so just make sure that you're taking into account both, right? You don't want to just judge a position based on the static factors. You don't want to just judge it on the dynamic factors either. You need to think of your short-term advantages and disadvantages and the long-term advantages and
Yeah.
disadvantages.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's take a look at some actual positions, and I'm just kind of curious to see how you'll evaluate them. Or actually, sorry, before we look at positions, there's a game that I want to go through with you. Okay,
Hmm.
which is something we haven't really done before. Normally we just look at a lot of positions, which I think is good. But I actually want to go through a game with you, a game of mine that I'm
Hmm.
hoping you haven't seen before. I don't know how much you look at my games, but does this ring a bell at all? This game that I had against Rohan Salukdar.
No, really, I don't really follow too many games of Eastern Canadians, but yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was worried because he's a Canadian. Maybe you would have been like,
yeah, no,
"Ooh, Josh played Rohan. Let me look at this."
no, go ahead. I'm not
But
honestly like
okay,
my my chess education term is specifically in terms of like you know game history and knowledge is like
okay,
I don't usually pay
all
attention
right.
to games that
That's
happened in the past, right? Just focus on the present for the most part. Uh, yeah,
that's fine. Well,
so I don't
good.
know many.
You haven't. It's not spoiled for you then. Okay, so I
Okay,
played against Rohan. I've actually played him many times because I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and he's from Windsor, Canada. We're actually just
yeah.
like 30 minutes apart from each other, even though we're in different countries. So he comes to a lot of Michigan events. I've played in a couple Canadian events that he's also been in. So we've played many times.
Hmm.
This event was where I earned my first IM norm, and that was just January of this year at the
Oh, yeah.
Charlotte Winter IM Norm Invitational
Hmm.
in like Charlotte, North Carolina. So this was one of the games that I needed to win to get my first IM Norm. And okay, you can see that I did, but let's start to go through it. I think there are a lot of interesting decisions that
Hmm.
needed to be made in this game, and a lot of evaluating that needed to be done. So I played the English opening, which I don't normally do. Normally I'm a D4 player. Recently, I've been playing knight f3 sometimes to try to dodge prep. But this is one of the very few times where I decided to go into an English.
Hmm.
And Rohan played the symmetrical. And okay, I ended up playing for a quick d4 and g3. So, um, I ended up playing it in kind of a Catalan-esque manner,
Hmm.
you could say. But here Rohan strikes with e5. Okay, of course, this is kind of like in the Sicilian, e5 should be met by knight to b5, right? We want to make use of these squares that black left behind.
Yeah, there's some gambit
And
line with like d5, right? Or is it
not here, but
in a
I
similar
think the line
position?
that
There
you're thinking
was,
of
yeah, it's like the
is
Kasparov
the line
gambit
you're
or
thinking of
whatever.
is knight f6, d4,
The
takes,
anti-Benoni, right?
e5.
Yeah, yeah, here.
Right, the anti-Benoni. This is the gambit line where
Hmm.
black, of course, can't take back because of this
Yeah.
trap, so they end up doing this, but that's a little bit different. This game goes knight b5, bishop to b4 check, and I decided to block with the knight c3. And then here's where Rohan played the first move that I wasn't expecting. And I wasn't expecting it because, as it turns out, it's kind of bad. He was supposed to just play d6, but
Right.
instead he played a6,
And this
encouraging me to
is
hop into d6 to
okay.
check.
Yeah.
Kind of weird, right?
Hmm.
So hop into d6 I did, and he plays king to e7.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay, this is where we get to the first moment where there's kind of a decision that needs to be made. We could take on c8, grab the bishop pair, hop out to f5 with check.
Hmm.
Yeah, what do you think White should do?
Yeah, I know this is similar to that one Sicilian line where you play the king e7, and it's fine for black. I'm not sure about the differences, so I'm trying to think in terms of that. But I guess just like, ignoring like theoretical considerations, I guess I should look at it purely from just evaluating this position as a totally separate one.
Well,
Yes.
you can use your
Uh,
knowledge of similar positions to help you. Nothing wrong with that.
yeah, like here the d5 square is just this seems like just a much better version of that one Sicilian line I was thinking of because the d5 square here is permanently weakened. As opposed in the Sicilian where the pawn would just be on e6. So there's knight f5 to consider, which just looks like safest way to preserve the knight. And then king f8, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to be a little bit careful because the knight is loose there, obviously.
Right.
So I'm not really sure because if I go knight f5, king f8, I want to go knight e3, but I'm not sure about allowing bishop takes c3. Well, I guess then there's like bishop a3, and that's just really bad, right? Okay. Yeah, I want to go knight f5, knight e3. So stop
Okay.
d5 and get and like invite bishop takes c3 if he wants.
Yeah, very good. That is the right approach to the
Yeah.
position. And so, of course, you can recognize that this bishop on c8 is terrible, and we want to leave black stuck with that, right? We
Mhm.
don't want to trade and help them solve one of their biggest problems. And the square that's of key importance here, recognized, it's d5, right?
Yeah.
And if we're able to maintain control over the d5 square, we're going to just be clearly better. If black is able to get in the push d5 themselves, they're going to equalize, maybe even have an advantage, right?
Hmm.
So if we were to just like trade on c8 and play bishop g2, and black was able to, I guess they can't quite play d5 here, but a move like at this point I would maybe be concerned about takes knight a5, where
Not
in
concerned
this
about
case
bishop.
bishop a3 check, d6,
Yeah,
the
d6 is
dark
pretty
square bishop.
convenient. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't give us quite enough for the terrible pawns, especially with knight takes c4 coming next.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, knight f5 check is definitely right, and then you really have to follow up with knight e3 here,
Hmm.
and this is the hard move I found for a lot of people to find, because you don't. It seems at first like a nice square for the knight, right? Who doesn't love a knight on f5?
Hmm.
But once you recognize that it's actually a liability here, and that it's helping permit the move
Hmm.
d5, you got to drop it back and help cover the square.
I guess the
Right?
one
If we try to,
continuation. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
sorry. Just the one thought I had
Go
was
ahead.
I am like slightly maybe concerned is too strong of a word, but maybe knight e4 is something that I have to really consider and see what I want to do because I can't really defend the knight with my queen because there's knight d4. So here, I guess you can just play well knight d5, I guess. And still, if he takes with either knight or bishop, then I take with the b pawn and just go bishop a3 next.
All right, I like
So
that. I like that. Here, I would prefer b takes over knight takes, just
yeah,
keeping the initiative.
but here, like it's
And
black looks more or less
Mhm.
solid here. That's why I was unsure about this. But here, I suppose
Yeah,
like
so
you can go
these
bishop
pawns are
e3, I
all
guess. You go bishop e3,
weak. Uh,
just counter the
I don't know
bishop
about bishop e3. I don't, well, actually,
at
yeah,
some
maybe.
point.
Okay, I would, much rather trade the dark square bishops than the light square bishops. So actually, yeah, bishop e3, trade the dark square bishops. The thing is, okay, this pawn's not really accessible. I wouldn't consider it a weakness. These are
Hmm.
weaknesses, but this is a weakness. This is a weakness. All right, the king is a weakness. All these dark squares are weaknesses.
Yeah.
The dark square bishop is horrible. Right? I still think that black has a lot more problems than white here.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. The position's kind of far from solid. Bishop e3, as you were saying. If we have takes,
Maybe not
knight takes,
necessary,
let's
but I
say.
mean, because
Yeah.
actually, what I was thinking was, black doesn't have to take. Black can just like lead the bishop on c5 because I don't really see a problem with allowing this structure with d takes, unless I'm mistaken. But
Yeah, I don't
I'm
know.
not
Then our
entirely sure.
knight is even happier
I suppose,
because
yeah,
now if black ever tries to take it out, they're giving us a pass pawn,
yeah, but I mean,
right?
yeah,
Okay,
I
b7 is
definitely,
going
I'm
to
definitely
be
convinced white is quite a bit better just because like black's king is bad. But I mean, I still have some issues to solve with the g2 bishop, I suppose, long term. But
I mean, your G2 bishop is great. I think the plan is pretty simple. You're just going to castle. You're going to stack up your rooks on the B
yeah,
file, right?
the b7 pawn is the big focal point here. And
Yeah, knight could hop into B6 at some moment,
also, then
potentially. It
if the
could be
knight
quite
moves,
good.
if the knight moves and our rook's on d1, we can also just play queen e3 to fork some pawns if I want.
Queen E3, if the only way for them to cover that is Queen D6, they're going to be
Yeah.
viable down the D file. So, yeah, the thing to recognize is that these doubled isolated pawns are not that bad because along with the doubled isolated pawns, we have two very nice semi-open files
Hmm.
looking towards two of black's weak pawns, right? Which are actually more accessible than our weak pawns. The difference is our rooks can get to B1 and D1. Their rook cannot get to C8,
Yeah.
right? Because this bishop is like impossible to develop, or at least it's very slow to develop. So their weaknesses are actually a lot more accessible than ours. And that's something you need to consider with weak pawns. Is not only are they doubled or isolated or backward, but how accessible are they?
Hmm.
Um, you know, these are I think you can see actually much clearer targets than
Yeah.
these.
I guess after bishop
So
c5, bishop g2 as in the line that you mentioned, probably black should play for b5. I don't know. Like,
yeah, that's possible.
maybe.
Like even b5 right away
Yeah,
can be considered.
this is what I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah, and I
Probably
don't
not
think we
enough for
would trade.
probably not enough for black to equalize, but it's probably what black should be at least aiming for at some point, right? Just to destabilize d5 a little
Potentially.
bit.
Let's
But
say bishop e3 here, and okay, I think they would probably have to trade.
mm,
Um, d6 in this case seems to allow like takes, and I was even gonna say like knight b4. Does that work?
hmm,
Yeah, I was thinking knight b4, cb4. Well, okay, then we trade, right? So, and if they try to trade and take, then rook d8 comes, right?
yeah.
So, yeah, they got problems. So takes. Queen d6 is well, actually, maybe not a threat because queen e7 in reply. Okay, bishop takes e6 is a threat though. That's clear.
Yeah.
So maybe they try to get developed. We just get castled. The thing about b5 is it opens up the position, and I don't know if black wants to be opening up the position with this king on f8.
That is true.
If they try to get castled by hand now, we can maybe maybe something like a4, kind of force them
Hmm.
to make a decision with this pawn. And Okay,
Yeah,
I
this
mean,
looks pretty
I'm
powerful.
just playing through an example, but ooh, can we even oh wait, this is just a tactic here. Sorry. Black can't go rook b8.
Hmm.
Yeah, queen c7. Let's no, then knight d5. Wait, what did they do? This is annoying. Um, I don't know. We just have like great development here, right? And
Hmm.
um, black just has a lot of tactical issues if the position opens up too quickly, right?
Hmm.
So yeah. Okay, but yeah, you got it right. Them and of course, if they're gonna trade here, now it's like the same structure, but they gave away their dark square bishop. That's gonna be even worse for black.
Yeah, obviously.
Where and
Yeah.
again, you shouldn't be scared of this line just because you're getting doubled isolated pawns, because these are even weaker. And as you mentioned, bishop a3, that's a killer diagonal. That's just going to be incredibly strong. They try to get castled by hands. That's fine. We're going to get these amazing bishops
Hmm.
and a plus 3 advantage basically for white.
Hmm.
So all right. So let's see what happened in the game after knight to e3. Oh, actually, but one other thing I'll mention is that you would also want to consider if knight e3 is necessary or if you can just continue developing,
Hmm.
right? Because if bishop g2 was adequate to prevent d5, then you'd probably prefer to play bishop g2, right? And then, d6, maybe then we go back to e3, right? But
Hmm.
bishop g2 is not adequate to prevent d5. Black would play it.
Yeah.
And if we take the pawn, they take the knight. We take the knight, they trade the queens. They take on c6, we take on c6. Rook d8 check. So we're up a pawn, but we have massive issues here.
Mm.
Right? Like, okay, king e1 walking into this pin is just deadly after rook c8. And then rook takes c3.
Yeah.
All right. And bishop d2 walking into this pin is not much better. There could be moves like this potentially. Um, yeah, or even takes bishop e4 seems lights out.
Hmm.
So not good, right? 93 is necessary. Okay, so let's continue. d6, bishop g2, bishop e6, castles. And at this point, Rohan decided that he was going to trade on c3, because I guess if he doesn't now, I'm ready to stick one of the knights into d5 and he'll lose
Hmm.
the chance. Still, I don't know if that was a good decision. It probably was a little dubious. I take back, and then he goes king e7.
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, I just continue with the most obvious move here, which in my opinion is bishop a3, right? We want
Hmm.
to get this bishop developed. And I have a principle, which is that whenever you have a piece that your opponent doesn't have, you should strive to make that piece the highlight of your position, right? You should
Hmm.
try to make the best possible use of that piece that you have that your opponent doesn't have, right? Because that's a large part of where your advantage is going to come from.
Hmm.
So we want to make this dark square bishop as powerful as possible.
Yeah.
And all right, so we have queen c7, and
Maybe
this is kind of an
b5.
important moment.
Maybe b5 would be a little bit more preferable. I don't know.
Black
Or or
b5
or,
here.
or like yeah, b5, but like I was just gonna play queen e2, rook 2. Or sorry, I mean, okay, after queen c7, I want to play for b5, but I mean, white looks pretty quick in just getting a rook to the d file, right? So, yeah,
Well,
it looks very
this
hard
is an
for black
important
to
moment
handle.
because you're
Yeah.
right that b5 might be a source of counterplay for black.
Hmm.
So try to
Not
figure out
really.
the best approach to this position.
Yeah. Um. So I guess black is not only preemptively defending the knight on c6, but also wants to clear the d8 square.
Hmm.
So a slow plan like queen e2, rook d1 probably isn't terrible, but it's also like, you know, it doesn't seem to be the most efficient way, I guess. Um, Move to always consider in these positions is putting a piece on d5 to straighten up your pawns. But it also obviously loosens your activity, or yeah, reduces your activity on the d file. So let's see. I want to move my queen out of the way to just double up on the d file, which is like obviously the most straightforward you know
Mhm.
plan here. There's also the move c5, which is definitely a candidate to consider since he cannot push d5 just yet with his rook not on d8 yet. Or I guess maybe he could sack the pawn of d5, but I don't know. I don't really see much compensation for that. So c5. I guess if I'm not just move my queen out of if I'm not moving my queen out of the way, if like a queen b1, queen c2, then I want to play for c5, like right now. So
Well, I'm gonna make you pick a plan.
I think
Would you
90,
go for the?
yeah, I think 95 is definitely not like it's way too risky. Like it, like I'm not concerned about the pawn structure right now.
Right. As you should not be. So I'll just say knight d5 would be a horrible move.
Yeah,
And I considered it. It's the first thing I thought about. But after like takes, knight a5, right? We
yeah.
shut down the d file, shut down our own bishop. This knight's landing here.
The
And
thing is, I
suddenly we're
do,
worse.
yeah. The thing is, I do have to be
So
somewhat quick because if I do nothing, then like knight a5 is just gonna win a pawn, and it could get unpleasant if I just sit and do nothing. Um, so I think I do have to be somewhat direct here with a move like c5. Let's see.
that's correct.
Yeah, I would go with c5.
You're right.
Yeah,
I mean, c5, if they trade, we're happy because we totally opened up the dark square bishop,
yeah.
right? And
And then
then
I
we
would
have,
continue with
essentially coming into
I would maybe continue with a
yeah,
move like rook b1. Just
try to get it to b6. That'd be great, right?
yeah.
And c5 d5. This is important as well. We can grab the d5 pawn, and if ever they tried to pin us, we can support it with c4.
Yeah.
Right? The one nice time we have doubled pawns and we can play c4 twice. So yes, this move is urgent. If you try to like stack up on the d file, let's say queen d3, right?
Or maybe queen
Rook h
c2.
to
But I
d8.
mean, yeah, I mean, either way.
Rook.
Yeah.
Either way. I mean,
Probably
the
even knight
problem
d5
is
directly before rook d.
knight d.
Maybe black doesn't even need to play rook d. You can just play knight a5 right away.
Oh, knight a5 directly. Yeah, probably, and then it'll likely transpose,
Oh,
right?
maybe
If
yeah.
we
I guess yeah.
go
Just maybe.
with rook d1, rook d8.
Hmm.
And but the problem is we can never go c5 now, and we can't put any additional pressure here.
Yeah.
There's maybe like knight f5 check, but it just doesn't work, right? Once knight takes c4 lands, we're we're losing, right? And so yeah, there is a sense of urgency here. c5 is correct, and Rohan replied with d5.
Yeah. Probably the most human
And
move,
okay,
right? Like you gotta close
yeah,
that
yeah,
gap.
yeah. You want to try to shut down this bishop, leave white with the doubled isolated pawns, and try to keep your king as sheltered as possible. But okay, this gives away a pawn, and we should grab it. The game goes takes, and Rohan actually trades again, and then attacks with rook to d8.
Okay, so just a quick question. What would you I'm not saying this is a concern or anything, but what would you do after rook d8 here? C4. Oh, okay, sorry. I just okay, yeah, there's nothing. I thought there might have been a move, but
Right.
okay.
If this knight ever
Um
moves, then we'll have discovered check,
yeah,
right?
that's what I was thinking.
Queen a5 might seem a little annoying, but just queen to b3 probably
Something like this,
keeps
yeah.
um keeps everything defended and hits at b7. Let's say rook b8, even just like rook to d1, knight d4 is already allowing a lot of very dangerous things
Yeah,
to
you don't have to
happen.
think about this. Yeah, this is just very bad. But
And
well, you can even just play like e3 to not allow knight d4 if you want. Yeah, like e3 here.
yeah, that's probably safer. I was just thinking the exchange sack was going to be very strong, and it is, but this is definitely safe. Just maintain the status quo, and white's much better. So, yep. So instead we had trade and rook to d8 and another kind of important decision. What
Yeah,
are
we're
our
trade.
options here?
Yeah, I tend to play the wrong queen move whenever I have like a bunch of options, right? To retreat my queen.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to find the most precise one. So queen e4 seems to be the only one that like comes with the tempo, I guess. Um
This might just be a very easy decision for you.
yeah,
It's
like
possible that I was the only one hung up on this, but
is there a problem with queen e4? Because like I mean if he plays like g6 that just weakens the dark squares, you could just go queen h4 after.
right.
Like yeah, I mean queen
How do you feel about
e4,
the move queen d6 check?
queen d6 check. Yeah, that did not even pop up on my radar. I mean, I'm up a pawn here. Like my king's much safer. Like just queen e4 and go rook d1 next. Eh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is good, which is good. I mean there are conflicting principles here, right? You're up a
yeah,
pawn, so being up material, it's good to trade, right? So trying to trade the queens in some respects makes sense. It also you seems to straighten out your pawn structure a bit, but the reality is this endgame is just bad, like
yeah.
not
I mean, this is
pretty
a no
evident,
brainer.
right?
Yeah,
Like
the structure.
it's just good knight, bad bishop. Our pawns are still terrible. So, I think, okay, I'm glad that you weren't tempted by that.
Yeah, so I
You
guess
want
the
to at
only
least
move.
notice it as a resource, because if they had to go rook takes for some reason, it would be winning, right? But okay, it turns out it's just a bad
So I
endgame, and
guess
queen e4 is
this
correct.
forces h6 probably, right? Oh,
Yeah, it
g6. Okay.
probably did need to force h6, but instead Rohan played g6, which was a
Yeah, like
mistake.
h6 seems much more natural. Just go like, I mean, I guess like you like queen h7 is never the end of the world. Like you just have your queen there, and you can just like I don't know. Well, actually, how do you defend the g7 pawn after h6, queen h7?
H6, queen h7.
Yeah, I guess rook g8, but I mean,
Rook g8, and yeah, maybe.
but then you can just go like rook d1, rook d6, right?
Yeah,
Well, I
for sure.
suppose black can kick away the bishop at any point, but still, it looks
Queen
quite.
a5. This is the type of move we probably don't even need to respond to. Just like rook b1
Yeah.
should be winning, right? And then if we need to defend with, let's say, rook b3, we can,
Yeah,
and we
black
can
can't
wait
move
to
either
maybe
rook,
double up.
and this is just really bad. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So, all
sounds
right,
right.
so he tries g6, and as you mentioned, this allows queen h4 check with a fork, and if the king goes back, then we can get away with grabbing the h7 pawn, right? No consequences there. And so
Yeah,
Rohan tries king e6.
yeah,
A dangerous
you
move, but
do have to
he's
be.
trying to hold on to the h pawn by making it poisoned.
Yeah, I mean, here I think for at least for me, it's pretty evident that like black is basically busted, but you do have to be precise. I can't just like play any slow move because I do have to figure out how to activate my bishop eventually, right?
Yeah,
Um,
maybe. Black should be busted, but if the queens came off or something, right? If the queens came off right now, black is like much better, maybe winning. So, you know,
yeah, so I guess I suppose rook d1, and then I have to consider queen a5 because that seems like the only way to get out of that threat.
what's the threat with rook
Um,
d1? Rook d6, maybe?
well, isn't the pawn b on d6 that structure which you said was bad in the end game? It's much stronger in the like much stronger right now. I mean, it denies
Oh,
black
sure.
from rerouting with knight e7 later. Like it's just like if black just sits and plays nothing, then it allows like rook d6. Then I mean, yeah, I guess I do have to calculate what happens here, right? But I don't know. I mean, out.
Yeah, I mean, you can
It's hard
calculate
to
that,
tell.
and you should, but I feel like I don't like rook d1 because it's going to lead to rook trades,
Yeah,
and
so rook b1
trades
is
are
the
not what you
other.
want here.
Rook b1's the other natural move.
Okay, you need to be very clear in what your target is, right? Instead of just playing natural looking moves, how are you planning to win this game?
I don't think I have a clear plan yet because I think it depends on what black plays. At least for me, like I just want to somehow get my rooks in. F4 is also another plan, but it's you got to consider the consequences of that potentially. Um, I actually don't know if I want to play F4. It doesn't look like it's very all that
You want to get
productive.
your rooks in for what purpose?
Yeah, I gotta like play Rook F6 and mates.
Okay, yeah, like are you going
Initially.
after b7? Are you going after the king? What's the target here?
Well, I don't know. Like I suppose, like if black sits and does nothing, then a rook sitting on b6 could be nice. But I think the king is a much more vulnerable target than b7 at the
I would
moment.
agree. Yeah, I would
Uh,
agree.
So I'm wondering, like f4 is an idea to play, but I'm not sure. It's always hard for me to tell, whether I need to prepare these sorts of moves or not.
Well, I mean, you got to do some calculating, right?
Mhm. Yeah, so if black like somehow sets up some defensive setup, I guess yeah, this doesn't even work. If black ever touches the F pawn, then like F5, there's like G4 and like everything starts opening up. But starting with F4, hmm,
Well, I mean, let's throw out a move for black. How do you think they might respond?
yeah, quite difficult for me to tell right off. Just looks extremely sharp.
They have options, right? We don't need to
Um,
narrow it down to one move for black. We just
Queen
need to start
A5 is
somewhere.
an option. That's always the
Sure.
move that
Well, let's
secures the
start there.
bishop.
Queen a5.
Mhm.
How do you respond to that?
FE5 appears to work. Wait. Yeah, FE5 appears to work. Hmm.
Mhm. Okay, so
So
f
maybe
e5, queen takes a3. Show it to me.
uh if trying to see where's the mate after king e5 and king d5 because king e7 there's rook a6.
Mhm.
So no, I mean that's got it. Like there's just like rook d1 then queen g5, right? It's just leading to mate. King goes to b5, there's rook
d1
b1,
and
and like I mean
queen
it's just all mating. Like
g5.
with the e5 pawn
Yeah,
gone, there's
sure.
just no way. I mean, I don't think I have to
Okay,
I
sure.
don't
I
think I have
mean,
to really
that's
calculate that
not
too deeply.
okay. I mean, I fair enough. I mean, every once in a while, relying on your intuition like that is gonna fail you. But
I mean,
you're
the king
right
on
in this
d5
case.
and like, I mean, that's just ridiculous,
Yeah.
right?
I will say, although, normally, as I've taught you, it's good to first consider ignoring the threat, right? That being said, I think sacrificing the bishop there is totally unnecessary because
Hmm,
we can just meet queen a5 with bishop b4 coming
that
with
too,
tempo. And there's no takes because then f5 check picks off the queen,
yeah.
right? So we can just save the bishop with tempo and then continue with f takes e5, and it's going to be, I mean, the same thing's gonna happen, but without us needing to give away a
Yeah.
piece. Right.
So that way played in the game, f4.
So yeah, f4 is correct. Yeah, you need to be clear on what your target is, right? And this is the type of position where there actually is some sense of urgency. Like, yes, you're much better. This king on e6 is ridiculous. But if you give time for black to start, bothering you for a queen trade, shutting down things with f5, like, or if the king gets to somehow walk over to g7, suddenly black's going to be fine, right? So you can't afford to just play natural looking moves. You need to play urgently. And f4 is the way to go. Yeah.
So
And
is something like queen e7 here is critical, I suppose.
yeah, queen e7 is probably a critical try. This isn't what Rohan played, but we can definitely look at it.
So for starters, like f5 check doesn't seem to lead anywhere. That's the first thing I considered. Queen h3, king f6, but then then fe5 looks to be pretty clean. I don't want to go queen g4. Obviously, f5 is what black wants to play to get the f7 square. So queen h3, f5, then. Huh. Yeah, because I was thinking like I saw all these defensive setups where black, first offers a queen trade and then tries to get the f7 square with f7 to f5. So what I'm considering is whether I can play, just very direct and play for g4 right there, or if it's too risky.
Are you saying queen h3, f5?
And then g4. Yeah, or if I should take on e5 first. Yeah, it's hard to visualize exactly what sequence of move. No, I guess there's no reason to play that. I can just go fe5 and then e4. Seems to be much more direct.
Or
Open up
e4
the
right
e-file.
away. I think
Yeah,
e4 is
e4.
going to be better than g4.
Yeah,
Right?
so I would probably go with just queen h3 and then
Actually is right. Yeah. I mean, and you don't need to do too much calculating to do this, right?
the
I mean,
kings
it's
has
kind
to
of
go
process
to
of elimination. You're not going here and walking into f5 with tempo,
yeah,
right? You're not trading the queens, that's for sure. You're not taking here
get
and
trapped.
getting your queen trapped. Although
Yeah.
you could consider it because there is the potential that you could meet rook h8 with f5, but black doesn't have to take, right?
Oh yeah,
And
no,
then
that was never on my radar. I don't want to give him that like counterplay.
okay.
Right?
Good,
Yeah.
good. So kind of by process of elimination, we have to go for queen h3 here, right?
Yeah.
And so that can save you some time if you're in this position, right? You don't need to calculate all of the, lines that could follow after queen h3 if you know that queen h3 is your only decent move,
Right.
right? Just play it and save the time for later, right? If f5, I like e4. You could take on e5 first as well, but the problem with that is it's not forcing, right? Black doesn't need to take back. They could do something maybe like queen g5 instead, and suddenly you have to be a little bit worried about this counterplay. I think something like bishop c1 would still be very strong, and
I think you can play e4
you
anyway.
can.
Or I guess this is possible.
Yeah, but and then here it's weird. Do you want to trade into this with the two extra pawns, but or
Well,
well, no, one extra, yeah, two extra pawns.
well, I mean, you
No,
still
you
go queen
probably
h7 and queen b7 and attacking c6, so you're not in time to like
yeah.
mate on h2 just
Yeah.
yet.
Right.
So
Just take on
yeah,
h7, and this should still be very good. But, I think rather than taking on e5, which is a slow move that doesn't force a reply, just going for e4 right
yeah,
away
and
is going
then
to be a
rook
bit
a1
superior.
lights
But I
out.
mean, with all this getting busted open and the files blowing open, white's totally winning here, right?
Yeah.
So okay, king f6 is probably the better try. And
Mhm.
now you have to be careful because I'm not actually a fan of f takes e5 check, king g7,
Yeah, at
where
first I was
now
thinking
black
this.
is
Yeah, I was about to
Black's
mention
totally
this.
fine here,
this
right? They're safe and so what would you prefer to play here?
so I'm thinking about this. Queen h7 might just be a free pawn.
Rook h8.
Yeah, and then fe5 now so that you don't have king g7.
Mm-hmm. King e6 and queen g7. Right. I think that's good. The two most convincing moves in my mind are queen takes h7 and f5. I think is
f5 too,
also
yeah.
very powerful because g5 just walks into mate, right?
Right.
So yeah, but I like your line: rook h8, f takes e5, and queen g7 with rook f6 probably coming next, and white's totally winning here. So in the game we had e4, trying to keep it closed. And what move is crying out to be played here?
Yeah, f5 to prevent f5 from being played himself.
F5 because we don't want them playing F5, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
And so it's done. And then
I
I'll just say I threw in a
wonder
check here.
I wonder if
But
Rook f5 not working. Wait.
question. Um,
Maybe it doesn't. Huh.
well,
Yeah,
here's what I'll say.
the king goes to e5, and like it's funny because I think this would work if the pawn was on c4 rather than on c3, so you can go bishop e2. Because I think the king goes back on the dark squares, or at least to e5. Because I was thinking rook takes, king takes, and then queen h3, but then just even just king f6, right? It might not work with the king being able to stay on the dark squares like that.
Well, okay,
So
let's calculate it. Let's calculate because you're right, it is critical. All right. Rook takes, king takes. What's your
yeah,
follow-up?
yeah. What at first I like the only move to prevent just like king e6 seems to be like queen h3, but I mentioned that the king, since my dark square bishop is totally on the wrong side of the board, just king f6 and let's say the other rook to f1 and the king g7, there's just nothing. So yeah,
What's wrong with takes, rook f1,
rook f1 right
king
away.
e6? Yeah, rook f1 right away.
um oh, I just realized that you lose the queen after king e5. Oops. You also probably get mated or both, but yeah, queen f4 there, huh?
So king e6 is forced.
Hmm.
There it gets kind of weird
I
because
think
if
it's
we go like
unnecessary. I
queen
mean, like,
f6 check.
it looks like you're winning no matter what you play. Like, just don't sack a rook. Like, it was just something fun to consider. But no, in a real game, I would not take on f5.
Oh no, it absolutely needs to be considered, right? And in fact, I thought in this position for over 30 minutes.
Really, okay. If I have more time,
Because
then I'm going to calculate. But like, assuming that I'm low on time, which is probably going to be typical if I get this type of position. What we're like 25 moves in, 30 moves in, close to there. Like, I'm probably really down on the clock already, and
it might have not been 30
yeah,
minutes, it might have been like 20, but
I might
um
not be able to
so
fully see
here's what
this
I thought. So
through.
rook takes f5, king takes, rook f1, king e6, queen f6, king d7, right?
Yeah.
And it's like it doesn't quite work because if we take and let them slip away to c8, right, they're safe. If we check on f5 and they go to e8, their queen covers f7, they're safe. It's like this f7 pawn was actually the source of a lot of problems
I
for
think,
this rook
yeah.
sacrifice.
I was thinking the big problem is also the bishop on a3. It's just not quite in the game yet.
Yeah, it's not contributing at all. That's true. That's true. But
Yeah.
I mean, this is very close to working, right? King e6. Um, like there's other things to consider too. Probably not queen takes e4 because that allows a blocker to come into play.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, like we're probably rook f6 check is interesting. And maybe winning there, maybe just winning. But I don't know, like king d5. Um, it's very unclear.
Yeah.
But what I realized is that if I throw in a check on h6, it makes
First.
things
Then
much
you
more
just win
clear.
back f5, right? Then you just win f5
If they
pawn.
move the king away, yeah, if they run back and we go rook takes f5, this is easy, right? We're
Yeah.
just doubling up. Like black can just resign here. It's
Yeah.
over. And if they come up to e5, well,
Yeah. Rook f5 because
then
you got sixth rank is all covered.
rook f5, rook f1, king e5. There's that queen f4 skewer that
Yeah.
comes into play again, right? And with them being cut off here, yeah, that it's all forced. Of course, this just walks into mate, and this walks into a skewer. That's all the calculation necessary there. So black had to play f6.
Hmm.
Now this rook takes f5 move needs to be considered yet again.
Yeah, because now the seventh rank is more vulnerable, and yeah, I guess takes
Right.
one. Um, Okay, so takes rook f1, king e6, rook f6. If you go king d5, oh wait, no, that doesn't work. I thought that worked. I thought queen d2 and then queen f4 was winning a queen. But so he has king c4, which is ridiculous, but I don't see a follow-up since our queen's attacked.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the e4 pawn on the way, there's no like rook f4. So interesting. So but I do want to take with the rook, because if you take with the queen, you just get the same scenario, I think, where the king goes to d7 and then c8 and hides.
Are you sure?
Uh,
Um,
with the queen on f6, there's no like rook f7 or anything. That's the problem. Am I sure?
I would intuitively want to calculate queen takes first
Queen
because
takes,
it
but
takes
king
with the more powerful
d7.
piece, right?
Yeah. Of course, you got to consider that 1st.
Mhm.
But king d7, how is that different from the position with the
How can you
pawn still
prevent
back
them
on
from getting to
f7?
c8 there? How can you prevent them from getting to c8?
Oh, now do you want queen f5? Check.
Queen f5 forces them to go somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Where do they go?
Oh, I guess you do get your rook to f7 in the end, right? Queen f8. If you go back to the back rank, queen f8, rook f7 now. It's like, yeah, and then
Yeah.
pawn on c5 also stops. Yeah, okay. The retreat to d6.
Difference is
So
that they don't have an f pawn anymore, right?
yeah, okay, I see now. Yeah, takes.
And that changes a lot.
Yeah, okay, I didn't see this queen
So rook,
f5 detail, which didn't work, which wasn't leading anywhere before since the f7 pawn was safe. So
right. Before when
yeah,
the pawn was here, queen f5, king e8,
yeah,
and
I
they
guess
just
yeah, queen
have
f6 is
f7 covered.
important because yeah, I think if you do go rook f6. I mean, am I mistaken, or is there just nothing after king d5? I mean, you're down a rook.
In
Takes
what
takes
line?
check.
After
If you go rook takes f6, is king, what's after if king d5? There's probably nothing, right?
so I believe that's still winning for white. The
It is.
computer, at least when I analyzed this, seemed to think rook takes f6 led to mate, but I need to calculate it myself. Rook takes f6, king d5.
I mean, from a human perspective, that if definitely like the queen f6 line in hindsight is just winning, but yeah, just
Yeah.
the king goes to c4 though, and I mean, I don't see an immediate knockout blow. The computer would probably find one easily, but
Okay, I'm thinking like queen d2 check, king c4, queen c2 even.
yeah,
Something kind
something
of
like
slow
this.
like that. Just setting up for queen b3 might be very difficult to stop.
Right. Yeah. Queen
Right.
b3 is a pretty powerful threat. Yeah. And then let's say
So
knight
I know
a5.
that both rook takes f6 and queen takes f6 are winning there.
Mhm.
Um, it's of my opinion that queen takes f6 is easier to calculate though. Um,
Yeah. I
but
just I completely missed queen f5 and queen f8. But yeah.
yeah, so
Well,
but there's a little bit more that calculation that needs to be done, right? Because okay, rook takes, king takes, rook f1, king e6, queen takes f6. What if they run to d5 there?
um oh, you want rook f5 knight e5? Is that what you're claiming?
Black's defense, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I'd prefer a check that doesn't allow them to
Right, because otherwise
bring a
king
blocker
king
in.
c4 there just allows queen e6, and that would lead to mates eventually. So knight e5 takes. Yeah, I did see this king d5, but I underestimated knight e5. I just gotta figure that one out. Um, check. The thing is, the queen is on a good diagonal now. So what if you just like open things up with c4 right now? Yeah, I mean c4 should just lead to
Hmm.
mate, no?
King takes c4.
Yeah, and then now queen e6 because you want to go queen b3 with mate to follow. If rook d5, then just rook c1, and then king b5 force, and then queen takes d5, and then the king's on b5, right? And then queen b3, like
I
it's
think
gonna be mate.
c4 that seems to win, yeah, because it forces them. They have to take, right?
Yeah, and then just queen
Yeah, they have
e6
to
is the
take.
key follow-up, I suppose. Well,
Queen e6.
yeah, otherwise the king just goes
If
back to otherwise because
if
you only
rook
have
to
one rook left, right?
d5, then rook c1 check,
Yeah.
and then you win the rook back, and yeah, I think that should be winning. That should be winning. That's a good
Yeah.
line. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. So okay. In conclusion, rook takes f5 works here and should be played. The other moves are still better for white, like +2, +3, but not nearly convincing. This is basically just forced mate. Um, and yeah. So either move wins here. I went with queen takes f6, so I'm biased towards that one. Um, if king to d7, the key is that, yeah, we can prevent the king from getting where he wants to go with a check on the key diagonal. And then king e7 just walks into mate. King e8, as you said, queen f8 and rook to f7 wins the queen by force. And okay, even this, okay, it's not like 100% over yet because they have two rooks against the queen, but we're going to be up a lot of pawns. This rook in the corner is still not getting out for a
Yeah.
while.
I'd even be
Plus,
tempted to I'd even be tempted to keep the queen f4, like just bishop c1, bishop e3, just get the bishop to d4 at some point, and like
oh, for sure. That's
that
a
queen versus two rooks is completely winning, no question.
yep. That's even better according to the engine.
Yeah.
And then the other line I had to calculate was king d5, and the line that I'm pretty sure your c4 move is totally winning. Yeah, I mean
Well, no, you
it
don't want to.
is.
Well, here,
Oh, you wanted queen e6,
yeah, it
right?
seems to be more just more
And then
direct, more forcing. Yeah.
queen b3
And
and
like,
like what rook b1 or something.
well, queen c3 also.
Queen c3 and then rook b1. I mean, there's not actually a totally forced mate here.
Why not? I mean, you can sacrifice your rook with rook d1 check, and like, but, I mean, rook b1 is forced mate, is it not? Oh, there's this move.
It's a little
Uh,
tricky. I mean, you're winning. You are totally winning. Yeah, yeah.
there's just a yeah, there is a mate with uh, well, bishop c1. You can yeah, bishop c1 probably.
Bishop c1 and then set up this. I don't know about that. I think
Oh, rook
check and
b4.
bishop b2. This is the
Sure,
cleanest
sure.
I
Yeah. I mean,
see
if I
here.
got in a game, yeah, I would see this.
And then
Just,
yeah,
yeah.
hopefully you figure it out. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the line that I calculated from here was rook d1 check,
Hmm.
king c4, and then queen e6 check.
Right.
Right. And this is very clean. It's just forced mate. If they take c3, then that's mate. If they go here, then check, check, and mate with the pawn. Right.
Right.
That's what I calculated. So okay. And after queen takes f6, then Rohan resigned.
Hmm.
So yeah, pretty crazy game. You did a good job of finding the right decisions at the critical moments, right? First of all, here you need to check and go back to e3. That's a very important, maneuver to find. And then the allowing the double isolated pawns, right? I think you are. One thing I've noticed is you're very biased against doubled isolated pawns, which fair. Doubled isolated pawns are pretty terrible, right? It's one of the worst pawn structures you can get into in chess.
Well, I mean, not
But there are
necessarily.
exceptions.
I do play lots of openings where I just get compromised pawn structures in the opening. No, I
Yeah.
do like
So,
dynamicism in chess. It's just it depends on the type of position for me. Like if I don't see any like concrete line, then I am naturally biased against bad pawn structures. But
mhm,
if there's like yeah, if there's just no initiative or compensation or anything, then I mean it's
sure,
yeah, but
sure.
yeah, I do tend to
It's just a
misevaluate
trend
these.
I've noticed. Like with some examples we've looked at in the past. I don't need to bring them up now, but there have been times where you've I guess instead of winning a pawn, you've decided to leave your opponent with doubled isolated pawns. When you could have
Well, I think it's
gone for more.
more so about like being averse to taking pawns that I don't deem very relevant. I feel like that's more of the
Okay,
reason.
fair enough. Well, in any case, you did a good job understanding the exceptions
Yeah.
to the rule here. So, all right. I wanted to give you some positions, some kind of strategic positions where you need to kind of evaluate what's going on and find the right approach.
Right.
And this one is a good place to start. So, what do you think white should do?
Hmm. Okay. Definitely a lot of counterplay for black. Counterplay ideas for black rather associated with
Mhm.
pawn c4.
Yeah.
Um, so if I had to get, I had to. Well, no, that doesn't seem very. Hmm. So I guess if you go by the themes here, like probably knight c4, as ridiculous as it looks, is maybe a candidate, but I mean,
It certainly is a candidate.
yeah, like I just want to
So
get put the stick a rook on b5 forever and just win all the pawns on the dark squares. And
right.
if knight d5, just simple bishop d2 and a5 is just bad. Bishop e1 will open up the e file, d file again. Um, hmm. Yeah, the thing is
Yeah, I
that
mean,
the
you
big
pretty much
problem
got it.
here, the thing is there's just not the way I found it was just like there's just nothing else to do to prevent c4. Like if you play c4 just yourself, I guess that's the other like no, that just loses a pawn on the spot, so or loses a piece rather on the spot. So you can't go c4. There's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
no
I
way.
guess
Like
this is a pretty
if
easy puzzle
black
because
goes c4, then
lack of options.
you're just gonna lose if you allow c4. So
All right, you're losing more than a pawn after
yeah,
knight
yeah.
takes c4,
There's
losing
knight
everything.
c4,
Yeah.
very stable. There's nothing on the b file. Rook b1, rook b5, and just so
The
good.
only other option really is to play something like rook b1 so that you can meet c4 with knight takes, pawn takes.
Yeah, and there's a background
And this
maybe to
is good
take.
for white
Yeah, this is the other way,
because
but the other way just seemed more, more forcing, I guess.
yeah, exactly. The problem with rook b1 is that well, okay, now they're not going to go now they're not going to go c4, and why'd you put your rook here,
Yeah,
right? They're just going to go like knight d5 or something, and okay, I mean this is still like pleasant for white, but it's not as good as you could have if you play knight
yeah.
c4. Yeah. So another case of you need to be willing to consider a ruined pawn structure because
There's no
well,
entry
it's
points.
not
Like
as
it's
bad as
not.
it looks aesthetically,
They're not
right?
accessible whatsoever, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. They're totally inaccessible. I mean, we have b4, we have all the infiltration squares on both files covered, right?
yeah,
And so these rooks are doing nothing. I mean, their bishop is hitting c3, but we have it defended. And there's nothing they can do about this plan that you mentioned of just sticking a rook on b5. And then, if they ever trade, we get a protected pass pawn. And if they don't trade, they're losing all their pawns.
yeah.
So this is just, yeah, I mean, this is just killer, right? Something like just rook d1 now or rook b1. Yeah, maybe rook to d1 and just kind of play
I like rook
even rook
b7, yeah,
b7
and then
here.
did that rook to d7.
Yeah, exactly. Or start to play on the other side a little bit. Maybe like moves like g4, but white's in full control here and much better.
Yeah.
All right, good. I think I'm actually gonna skip number 2 here, and we're gonna move on to this position.
Hmm.
All right. This is probably a little bit more advanced. Try to find a good plan.
Hmm. Okay, so first off, I think thematically, you know, the bishop here and the bishop kind of inactive on b3 at the moment. Like I just want to go f4, f5.
Mm.
So that seems like a major plan, but Obviously, got to be a little more concrete than that. Hmm.
It's a very committal plan and very dangerous.
Yeah,
First of
you're right.
all, is f5 going to be safe or is it just going to lose a pawn? That's a question. And also, are you
Well,
okay with playing f5 and eternally giving away the e5 square? That's another question.
I wouldn't necessarily go f5 with the bishop still on d7, but I mean, if the bishop stays on d7, then like, what's black going to do? Where's black's counterplay, right? If you're going to keep the bishop stuck there. I mean, I guess you can regroup with like rook a d8 and bishop c8, but that's just a little strange. Um, yeah, you don't need to start with f4, but I mean, I'm just trying to think of any other productive plan. Because I just really hate my b3 bishop right now. Like, there's just a lot of lines where I can't even sack a pawn in f5 if he just stays passive. So um
So the point behind f4, f5 would be to try to pry open this diagonal.
yeah, and it also comes with tempo on the knights, so it's like an alternative to the typical h4 h5 in this structure.
Mm-hmm.
But h4
Mm-hmm.
h5 doesn't
Okay.
seem all that effective because like the knight just goes to e7 and then to c6, so or e5 and then c6. Yeah. Just, so um yeah, I'm not too concerned about like move like bishop e5. I can just move my queen to like h5. The pawn on c3. I'm not concerned about like if you go bishop e5, I'm definitely not going to play c4. I'm just gonna just put my queen on h5 and just play that to down a pawn. Yeah,
Okay.
looks too dangerous. Um,
What's the piece you have that black doesn't have?
yeah, darks for bishop. I did try to like find ways to
Yeah, are you making the
activate
best
that,
possible use
but
of that right now?
maybe not.
How could it be better utilized?
Oh no, there is just a simpler plan that I think. So how about instead of f4, I do go to my to the other like just basic plan of h4, right? That way I can get the f4 square for my bishop. I didn't realize that at first. And like if you ever go e5, then well, that just helps me, helps my bishop, my other bishop. So maybe h4 is just strictly better.
So,
Like
yeah,
I
that
don't see
is
how do you stop
that is a
bishop
good plan.
f4 and
That is a good plan, and you make
yeah,
a valid point, which is that if they ever shut down bishop f4 with e5, well, then your light square bishop's happy, right? You could say you provoked a weakness.
right.
Um, so h4 is a good move. It's not the intended solution. I think this is second best. Um,
I guess a
the
possibility for black would bishop b5 to provoke c4 because you don't really want to move your queen away from the diagonal, right? Like you don't want your queen to lose contact of some of the light squares here in the event of knight e5 later. So h4, I don't know, bishop e5 may just be a stupid move, but just something I'm considering for black at least.
one question I would have, I know you said you're not scared of them taking the c3 pawn, but if you play
Yeah, just
h4, what if they did?
oh, for some reason I didn't think you could take right away. I thought you had to prepare it with rook d8 first. Yeah, I've totally forgot about that from the start. Um, so your plan after rook ac1 is
Bishop b5.
oh bishop b5 now. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
The Josh principle, right? They attack your queen, you attack their queen.
Hmm. Okay, so h4 queen c3. Hmm. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of squares because if you do you just push through with h5, like bishop b5? There's just no square for your no good square for your queen, eh?
Yeah,
So
pretty much, pretty much. So I'll say that's the annoying thing about h4. That's why this is second best, is that black actually kind of can get away with taking the pawn. You'll
well, I
obviously
mean,
have some compensation
it looks
in a
so
wide open
dangerous.
position.
Like it looks so dangerous because you can even just consider going like queen g4 and actually like queen
And
f4
knight
with bishop
e5 always
d4.
comes with
Yeah, yeah,
tempo.
yeah, yeah. I know that, but like it's just move your queen and bishop d4 is a huge threat. Like it looks a little hard to.
Move the queen where?
Hmm?
Move the queen where?
Well, maybe the queen just does get trapped. Huh? Well, not necessarily. Yeah, you can't. Queen g5 is. It's like queen g5, knight e5, and then queen f4 was my idea. I just want
So, okay,
to.
just want to make sure we're on the same page. So h4, queen takes c3. Are you playing h5 there or queen g4 there?
h5. I'm just wondering if h5 works or not.
Oh, h5.
And
Okay,
it's
so yeah, h5, bishop b5, queen g4.
yeah, and
That's
then
what you
like
were saying. Then knight
95, but
e5.
now queen f4 with the threat bishop d4. And like if you allow
Knight
bishop, yeah,
d3.
yeah, knight d3, yeah.
Suddenly
Uh,
black's pieces just got really active.
well, yeah, maybe
All with
it's
tempo.
what. Yeah, maybe that's right.
So
And you can always
I
repeat with
think
like, yeah, I guess queen f3, knight e5, even in the worst case, right? So yeah, yeah, there's probably not really a safe square for white's queen
look at it a
there.
little bit. I don't, this isn't the key thing that I want to have you calculate. But and it's possible bishop d4 actually is good here.
Well, I do lose a
Bishop
lot of game.
b5.
Well, I do lose a lot of games just assuming that I'm winning after my opponent takes one of my pawns. So you know.
I'm just trying to think something like this.
Well, we didn't play the line,
Maybe
right?
black.
We played we were supposed to play h5 first.
Well, no, you're
Okay, bishop
supposed to
d4.
play bishop d4.
Bishop d4 to
If
prevent
if
knight
we if we
e5.
want to look at your line, you're actually much worse after h5 because bishop b5.
Right. Okay, that makes
Um,
sense. Yeah.
g4 and d5.
And then knight
Or
d3.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So this is not good, but bishop d4 actually is good.
Hmm.
And boom, 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 and then like h6. The engines do like this for white, so so h4 is actually it is good, but it's not the intended solution. So try to think. I mean, and you make a good point though. Like if black ever plays e5, we're going to be happy about that. Suddenly our bishop becomes
Hmm.
very powerful on the opened diagonal. So how else can we take advantage of the fact that this is not something black wants to ever do?
Bishop c1 a3.
So you want to a3,
So
okay.
I'd activate it. But then again, you might run into the same type of mess after queen c3. But maybe it's just a faster way to So I was thinking,
What's the
yeah,
best possible square for this bishop to get to?
well, d6.
D6. I would actually disagree with that because on d6, although it looks good, it is not coordinating well with
Mm,
your rook. It gets in the way of the rooks, and
it isn't
it
the
doesn't really
best.
prevent black from challenging the d file.
Then I guess b6 is the other weak square.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So when I look at this position, I see one open file, right? And I like to say that when there's an open file, whoever controls that one open file is going to control the whole game,
So do you want to go
right?
like exchange that bishop b6 or what's the idea? I mean, I was thinking of this because
Well,
I did recognize b6 was really bad square, and if you just get your rook there, right? So, um, like, is it? I mean, the exchange stack can't possibly work, right? Like, no, there's no way.
oh no, that kind of defeats the
Yeah, it
purpose of
does.
getting a
Yeah,
bishop
yeah,
to d6.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I didn't see a way before. Huh.
The immediate, I mean, you could also switch the move order, right? There's bishop
Yeah,
b6 and
that's
then
the other
rook
thing
takes
I
d7,
mentioned.
but
Yeah, but again, that defeats the purpose.
it's not
Black
good.
gets to contest the
Knight
file.
e5. Yeah, their knight here is going to be better than your bishop here. They're going to kick your rook back, and that's. certainly not what
Oh,
we want.
there's also the plan of a4 to a5, another typical idea.
It's
Um,
true.
but
It also
the bishop
loosens the
is
bishop
hanging.
though, and
Yeah, that's what I
yeah.
was just about to say. So rook 8 b1, but then you have to move the bishop out of the way. I don't know. It's not too easy to activate it there. I mean, this is very slow, but you could also go like f4, e5, rook d6, bishop e6. But yeah, it's way too artificial.
That
Um,
is probably too slow. It's also, you're going to be weakening your own king a bit if you
yeah, I
start
mean,
moving
I'm
that
probably
pawn.
missing something very obvious, which is very likely here.
I mean, okay, what
Um,
other ways do you have of trying to
yeah,
set
they're
up
like, yeah,
bishop
yeah,
d6?
yeah, to get the bishop d4 and then queen to e3. So you could start with that. The bonus is that the queen on e3 would defend c3, and so is the bishop on d4.
Okay. Yeah, so what about bishop d4, e5?
Yeah, and then black can try taking the pawn, right? Similar to the other lines. Yeah.
Bishop d4, e5, what are you doing?
Ah, no. Okay, now the bishop actually makes sense. I'm thinking to go bishop e6 there. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so and the difference is that queen takes b6, rook takes
Yeah,
d7.
that is very deep. Well, bishop d4 first
These
to
pieces are
provoke
actually
e5,
coordinating very well,
and
and the
then
pawn
bishop
on e5
e6.
takes away the
Yeah,
yeah.
that is quite deep. Yeah. Nice one. Bishop
So it's a pretty
d4.
nice idea. Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you're able to get bishop d4, queen e3, bishop b6, then you eternally win the battle for the d file,
Hmm.
right? Because there's going to be basically no dislodging that bishop on b6. I don't know how the knight's going to get over there to remove it, right? At the very least, it would take black a long time. And having control over the only open file is, that's a big deal. It's a really big deal.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, the best move in this position is in fact bishop d4.
Hmm.
And you also you want to consider this right away. Of course, it's a forcing move, it's a tactical move, but it's not good, right? We can pretty quickly evaluate this as not a good outcome at all. We gave away the bishop pair for basically nothing, and black gets the initiative. Um, but if we can first provoke e5 and then do it,
Hmm.
this position is very good. Let's say maybe a move like queen c6, but okay, we can just double up on the
Yeah.
d file.
Thing that stands
We
out to me
want
is
to start.
just black is just down a piece on g6, right?
No, exactly. That's the thing. Without having access to the e5 square, this knight is horrible. So it's all about evaluating the difference in the minor
Yeah.
pieces, right? And with the pawn being on e6 versus the pawn being on e5, it is entirely different.
I guess black with knight
Uh,
h8 just sits there.
Yeah, exactly. At least they can cover the weakest square, and then yeah, but they're still just down a piece forever, basically.
Okay.
Now there is still queen takes c3 that could be tried, but not really. Rook c1, bishop b5, queen g4.
Now everything's just activated,
Here,
right? Just much better version.
like yeah, queen b4, bishop c5. It's actually all just very forcing. Um, or here, like there's gonna be a forced fork at the end, even if there weren't. White's totally winning here, right? Maybe now we just go for h4, h5, and the knight has
Yeah.
no good home. Right? So, yeah, and okay, so instead of e5, e5 is terrible. Black should probably opt for. Well, they don't want to put a rook on d8 here because that's just going to run into problems very quickly. So let's say bishop to c6, queen e3, and I don't know, maybe they put a rook on c8 or something. But once we stick a bishop on b6, and now maybe we have enough control over the position where we can afford to go for f4.
Yeah.
Now, but and then okay, we have to be careful. Probably not f5 anytime soon. The main idea with f4 is, I guess, just to gain space and restrict this knight. Knight e7. We can just start to double up rooks,
Yeah.
and you can see that white just has full control over the position. And this is very pleasant, right? Whoever controls the only open file controls the whole game.
Mhm.
So, all right, yeah, not the easiest plan to find, but of course, if you can take the d8 square under your control, it's things are going to be very nice for you.
Right.
So, all right, we can do a couple more. This I really like this position. I think this is a good one to do next. From Belyavsky Salov, 1988. Try to find the best plan for black.
Hmm. Okay, so first off, I think this is 100% like a defensive puzzle. I don't think black is, well, I suppose yeah, you are up a pawn, right?
Yep.
But I mean, this looks so hard to even like think about consolidating this that I just want to equalize. I just want to be solid and make sure that I don't just sit here with my bishop on d7 and on h6 all game. Um, at the moment, there's no immediate threat, but I mean, you got to do something at some point, right? The first move I considered was knight f5, and thankfully it does not get us mated because you have queen g5 and all these lines, and also if like rook d7 takes e6, there's just queen d1 and then queen g4, and then you take on e6, and you're up 2 pawns. So knight f5 works tactically. I'm just not sure if it's strictly best because I don't see like
Yeah, I'll
what I don't
calculate it a little bit more.
I don't see what black is trying to do after that. It's the one issue. Was I missing something in that line I mentioned, or
So they're probably not going to take.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
probably not going
they're
to take
they're
the
not gonna
knight
take
because
because there's no win after
you're
knight, so
right,
you're
that
not gonna
doesn't
take.
work tactically for them.
Yeah,
But how do you
so
feel about the position after something like knight f5, queen d2?
yeah, that's what I was saying. Like I don't see that like even though it looks like a natural move to get the knight in the game, it's not really doing anything, right? So I gotta figure out what I'm trying to
It doesn't
accomplish.
totally solve your problems. Yeah.
Yeah, and like going for active play with like some f pawn break is just way too risky.
Mm-hmm.
And like if you don't do any pawn break, then like what are you doing with your bishop?
Yeah.
Um,
I'm thinking like knight f5, queen d2. We don't really want to go rook to d8 and put ourselves into an eternal pin. I think that could be very bad. um,
you
and
could go bishop c8, but like then the rook on f8 will just be stuck all game.
right. Maybe there they go with like bishop c3, try to go to b4 or a5 and just kind of sneak in on the dark squares.
Mhm.
Um,
You could
Try to get it. So, if the bishop comes to d8, then your queen's in trouble.
you could try to get your
It's just
queen
this bishop's so
somewhere.
terrible.
I was looking at
Yeah.
moves like queen h4 or even queen g5 right away, but again, unless there's some tactic on the undefended rook on d1, then it just seems to put your queen on a useless square.
Mhm.
Even just queen h4 and queen g3 seems to be perfectly fine. Well, okay,
Oh,
well,
okay. They
not
don't want
there.
to
That
hang
loses
their
that,
bishop.
yeah, and then the other bishop. So okay, not quite there, but I mean,
Probably queen h4, like even if they move the bishop away, thinking like bishop g2.
well, so sorry, not queen h4 or queen g3. I meant if you go queen g5, then queen g3 seems to be perfectly fine. There's nothing hanging.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, are you in time to reorganize your pieces with king h8 and knight g8 or no? Like, my idea was to open up with f5, but that's gotta be way too slow and weakening. Like the bishop on d7 still targets.
Yeah.
That can't possibly
The
work
problem
either.
with f5 is it always justifies their battery on this being on this diagonal,
Yeah, that
right?
is right, but your queen's still nearby and your knight will be on f6, but and that just what looks way too slow and weakening either way. I mean, I'm just trying to find any
I
like
agree
way to reorganize the
because
pieces.
they could also do some rook lift, right? If they wanted to increase the pressure on the king side, and yeah,
So I'm wondering if like knight f5 is just to start with and then decide from there. But if it wastes a move and white has a killer blow in the next couple moves, then you can't defend it, right? I don't know. Looks,
this is not the best starting move. No, I
yeah,
think
no.
there's a much better plan in the position. This doesn't get to the root of the issue. It does improve your knight, but I don't think that's the
Okay.
top priority here.
The other thing is, but this is just a move that doesn't, just an illusion of, yeah, no, this doesn't even work. Was thinking of putting a pawn on c5 and then going for b5 or something along those lines, but b7 is always loose if he does that. Because if you could put a rook on b8 on the open b file, maybe you can tuck your bishop back to e8 and just chill. But yeah, this is not working out for me.
Yeah, it's a very, very difficult position. It looks like something you could get into from a French, maybe. Uh,
Well, not really.
very un uh, okay.
Pawn. Why is the pawn on c6, right? Just
That's a good point. That's a good
just not
point.
bad.
I guess the only
That's
similarity is you're in pain because you have a bishop on d7, but uh
yeah.
um okay. You should always think about, especially when you have worse pieces, right? You should think about what trades you would like to make to relieve your problems.
Yeah, I want to go like c5, bishop c6. That's one of my points. But um,
Oh, you're losing a pawn, and that's that.
well, I did look a little bit further than that, but um, I didn't see a follow up, so I kind of dismissed it.
Oh, okay. What was the idea behind c5?
To go bishop c6.
To try to trade the light square bishops, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and as far as I
So
can tell,
after
there's no
bishops,
other way to trade it off. Like,
I agree, but okay, after bishop
okay,
takes b7,
okay, you can go bishop
it's the
c8 and bishop b7, but like you're losing a pawn. That does free up your position quite a bit, but still, like black. Well, actually, maybe that's better than it seems. Huh.
you evaluate it.
I mean, if I see nothing else, then I mean, trying to just trade that off at any cost, even at the cost of one or even two pawns in some cases, then probably it's the best human try. But it's hard for me to evaluate whether it's actually the end position is actually like how good is it for white in the end?
Well, evaluate let's start with the static
Yeah.
imbalances.
So,
Let's say
but
a
white is
position
already down a
after,
pawn from the start, right? And the f5
yeah.
square would be a permanent outpost afterwards.
Yeah. So clearly, if we compare the knight versus the remaining bishop, that it's not getting opened up, right? It's going to be good knight, bad bishop. What about the
it's
pawn
c5,
structure?
bishop c8. Yeah, it looks very weakening for whites in the end.
I mean, they're kings, and they have the weaker king, right? They have isolated pawn, like overextended pawn,
And if you're able to just play
be
like
it backward
create
pawn.
lefts with h6, then you can just activate your rook on f8 next, right?
Bring it over to a8 and infiltrate or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
the knight on f5 covers the d6 outpost, so white can never make use of that. They can never get rid of the knight. It's right. It's amazing on f5. Could even shift over here to help with some attack.
Yeah, c5.
And so yeah,
Yeah.
black is actually significantly better, like -2 better after the move c5.
Yeah, that would not have occurred
Uh,
to me. I
willing to give away
mean,
the pawn in order to chase the bishop trade.
when I
So
kind of saw this position from a distance, I did consider this. I don't know why I didn't mention it, but I did not think it was like this good. I would not have guessed this was -2.
oh,
It's more.
it's very good. It's very good. I mean, of course, whenever your opponent has the bishop pair versus your bishop and knight, your ideal outcome is to transition into a good knight, bad bishop imbalance, right? And
Yeah.
so you need to figure out, what bishop trade do I need to make happen? What do I need to do with the pawn structure in order to try to work my way towards that good knight, bad bishop imbalance? And yeah, I mean, if they can't really say no to the trade, right? Because if they move away, then okay, like knight f5, queen g5, we're just gonna have as long as they can't block with queen g3, like we're just gonna have a killer attack here. And okay, even the opposite color bishops is still gonna be just winning for black, right? This is not an opposite color bishop endgame. This is an opposite color bishop middle game, which favors the attacking side. And white's got significant light square issues here.
So that
So
means from the starting position, if you don't play c5 right now, then probably white's just winning after c5, right? It's a big positional threat.
they could play it themselves. That's actually, I mean, let's say we played like knight to f5. Now, I don't think they can quite afford to play c5 here because, well, but maybe they could. I don't know. I think starting with queen d2 is probably better because here at least black gets to get the bishop outside, or they get to get the rook out
It's
before the
funny because
bishop is
my last at my
forced
club
back.
it was in this exact same structure. Like I managed to get in similar position against the Catalan actually, where I suffered with pawns on e5 and c5, and I misplayed the middle game at some point. But
You were
yeah,
on the black side of that?
of that structure, yeah, and I just died. And
Oh
my
man,
opponent offered a
that's
draw,
rough.
and I
That's
declined
rough.
the draw. Yeah.
It's like they give you the d5 square, right? But they
Well,
get
I
the
just had a
d6
bishop.
square.
I had a bishop just like this.
Oh, you
Right?
just had a bishop. Oh, that's horrible. Yeah, that's horrible. Because you don't accept the Catalan gambit, do you? You just kind of play it solid and do the semi-Slav, right?
Hmm?
Or do you take on c4?
Well, no, like the line that I had the most experience in is just completely different. It's theoretical, but I played a different line which I didn't have much experience, but I was playing a slightly lower rated player. I figured, okay, why not? Like I played the I played the c6 b5 line, and I mean I had a good
Okay.
position for a long time, but like he didn't know the theory, but he still like all of his moves were really natural, and it was hard for him to lose. It was hard for him not to find like the natural moves.
Yeah, I see.
Um, but yeah, I just
And
got just
yeah, if you're playing
bad
against the
position.
Catalan, get rid of this guy in any way possible, right? That's like one of Black's main objectives is like, okay,
Yeah.
either do boom boom or boom boom boom. Like you got to get rid of that light square bishop somehow, which but if you don't, then this is what happens,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So, anyways, I think knight f5. The main problem is that after queen d2 and this bishop is hit, if you go back to well, you're just not going to be able to. I mean, like you're just not going to have time for this anymore, right? Bishop c3, c5, bishop a5, or
Yeah.
at b6, then you're hanging this pawn, and then hanging this. Like so there's a bit of a sense of urgency here, where if you don't do this quickly, you're going to lose the chance, right?
Right.
That's why you need to start with c5 and not hesitate. And I mean, and the other thing is we're up a pawn at the start, right? You got to keep some perspective. Since we're up a pawn, we can absolutely afford to give a pawn back if
Mhm.
it helps transform the position in our favor.
Yeah.
All right. So don't be afraid of returning the material. That's one of the nice things about being ahead in material is you can give it back.
I'm wondering how much the evaluation would change if there was still a pawn on G3. I don't even know why the pawn's
There
not
was still a pawn on G3.
I don't even know why there's no pawn on G. I guess black just kind of like took on
That's
G4
a good question. I mean, if you look at the screen share, we can see the game real quick. I don't remember how it started, but oh yeah, that's right. It was some very weird. Yeah. White did some rushing up of the G pawn, and ended up.
And he took a pawn.
Black ended up winning it, but yeah, black ended up winning the pawn, but having to get this knight on the rim as a result.
Yeah.
And that's,
I mean, I have to assume that position. I have to assume that position just like 4 moves ago was just much better. Well, with the knight on H6 still, like, was there a better?
I mean, even
was there a better way?
This is -1 already. Black is much better.
After taking the pawn on G4, really? Taking the pawn is it's fine.
Yeah, this is -1.4 right now.
Huh. Interesting.
No, I mean, because the problem is, okay, this bishop's bad, the center's closed, right?
So I guess you would just go like rook d8 if white does nothing, and just eventually c5, bishop c6 anyway.
Yeah, I mean, this is solid, right? That's the thing, is like it's solid, and white's pieces aren't actually much better than ours.
Right. Yeah.
And
really helps to have a knight here. Really helps.
Right. So white tries to open up the position, as they should, and we get to this is kind of the critical moment where if you don't play c5, you are kind of suffering. Although it's still like slightly better for black after a move like rook a8. It's like -0.5, -0.6, but this is just -2.
And the move c5 is not possible because of what again?
C5
like,
for
let's
white?
say rook e8 and then c5. Yeah, you mentioned this, right? You said it's not possible now.
Oh, it could be possible here. Yeah, it certainly could be possible here. I don't know if it's the best move because it does make this bishop even worse, right? And maybe white still has hopes of trying to get it onto this diagonal one day. And it's not like you can play c5 here. I think it's, because now, okay, your rook's hit with tempo in this exact line. But yeah, white could play c5, and the computer says -1. So I guess black is still better somehow, but
yeah, I have no idea. Like this is. I mean, it looks like white's just going to redeploy his bishop to a better diagonal, and eventually like think about attacking down the G file. But I guess the one thing is that white doesn't have any like direct like, like at least
don't have any pawn breaks. That's one of the big things.
That's the issue with the G pawn being on G. The G pawn being missing.
Yeah, if they had a G pawn and they could play for some sort of break, then white would be, clearly for choice here. But with them not being able to open up the position any further, it's hard for them to make.
I still feel like in a practical game, I would pick white here in a practical game like it. I don't even see.
I would take black, but for sure. But you're suffering a little bit here.
I guess
you're not suffering.
I guess you could think about f6 and like getting the bishop on that line, maybe.
I almost never want to play f6.
Well, when the bishop's on c1, when the bishop's on c1.
Oh, at that point, yeah, maybe.
And the bishop's already on e8 to make sense, but I don't know. Other than that, it's hard to see. But anyway, that's where I'm already going on a tangent. So
that's all right. But yep, okay. So I think you get the main points there. But I mean, you always want to consider what pieces would I, ideally like to trade. How can I make that happen? And and if you're already up a pawn, don't be afraid to give back the pawn to transition the position in your favor. Okay. So, okay. Let's do like one more position. I don't have much more time, but maybe we can do one more. Let me.
Sure. I can try and make this quick.
Pick a good one. Well, okay, we can just end on this. I think that's probably fine, unless. Yeah, we'll do this one.
All right.
Black to play.
Okay, the move that's screaming out to me is just c5. If for some reason he ignores it, then I think bishop takes f3 is a positional threat with c takes d4. So probably will take. And then hmm. I think I do want to play for c5 though. Looks too good to
Okay.
pass up.
So let's say they
But
take it.
it's hard to calculate. Yeah, g takes is clearly critical. So I'm thinking, do I insert bishop f3 or not? Because the idea would be to take with the b pawn, but then there's just nothing on the b file to attack with the knight still on a4. Take with the knight, then yes. Okay, I see a direct line that actually just wins a pawn, if I'm not mistaken. So c5 takes, you go knight takes c5.
Yep.
And I mean knight takes b6 is just a non-issue, and there's no pin, there's no like queen b4 to pin the knight or anything of the sort. Knight b6 is just like
Hangs the queen as well.
yeah, hangs the queen.
So
So yeah, the idea of knight takes is that if he takes, you don't take back right away, you go bishop f3 first, and then take and you win b2. I mean, everything just looks like it's opening up.
yeah. All right. Well, you said you're gonna make it quick, and you did. This was
Yeah.
much easier. I suppose so. Yeah, C5 works. C5 works, and it is crying out to be played, right? It's like if you don't play C5, then what are you doing?
Yeah,
Your
the only
queen
breaks
side
are
is
e5 and
terrible.
c5, and clearly c5 is the one you want to be
And
going for, right?
yeah, both of these need to be considered. And this is okay. It seems like you're going to be giving yourself kind of like this split apart pawn structure, which is normally not advisable. But there are a lot of good
Yeah.
considerations that make up for that, right?
Gaining access to the
The
c5 square is also important. And you get rid of that knight so that can activate some pieces on the b file.
yeah. So I like knight takes, knight takes. You said throne bishop takes f3. I like that as well, and then take back. And it is opposite color bishops here. And okay, white can maybe throw in rook takes, queen takes, and
You could
let's
go
say
queen d1. Oh, no, queen d1's
mouse
not
slip.
really great.
Yeah,
No, here you
queen
can
d1
trade,
is probably
you
a good
can,
try.
but you can trade queens and go rook b2, right? And like that's just a clean pawn. You can't
Mm,
well actually rook b2, maybe rook c5 is possible because there's rook c8 check. But I mean,
and then it's a draw,
maybe
so
that's a
you
draw. Yeah, maybe
gotta be a little
just
precise.
huh.
So what might be better
uh,
here?
as bishop. Well, there's a problem with bishop b2 is that he wins c5 and a5 at the end, I think.
Yeah.
You could also just claim that b2 is impossible to defend, so just chill. I don't know, queen e7, back to the original
Queen
square.
e7. Yeah, but then b3. I don't know how impossible it is to defend if they can push it
Oh,
up.
b3. Yeah.
Okay, but you can dodge the queen trade and prevent b3, right?
Yeah, clearly I'm trying to find that move. Wait, what? Yeah, queen b6.
b6. Right. And you defend c5. You're hitting b2 a million times still.
Now b3.
And
Actually, you don't take though. You go bishop b2 instead, I believe.
yes, I like that.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
Don't trade
either one. I
queens.
like queen takes b3 also,
Oh yeah, because
but
there's still a back rank mate, right? There's a back rank mate still.
yeah, exactly. They can't take on c5 and
And
something like
if you take on c5 right away as whites, then you don't trade queens. You instead just take a3, defend a5, and the a pawn's gonna win the game. You take it the a
yeah,
pawn, yeah, the a pawn.
yeah, looks pretty good. Looks pretty good to me. I like maybe even more precise here is this move bishop f8. And saying that this pawn can't be taken or
Oh
else,
yeah, there's no more
now
check. Nice.
there's no more check in rook d8. And so the rook is forced to go elsewhere. And then maybe we can trade, play rook b1, then take on a3. This seems like a very good version where, yeah, I mean it's OCB, but I think with the a pawn here, it should be winning for black.
It is, hey.
Um,
I mean, really, is it that clear to
you're
you?
certainly playing for two results at the very
Yeah, yeah,
least,
yeah.
right? So,
But I would prefer to keep the queens
um,
on if I'm trying to win that endgame.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And back here, the computer actually prefers not committing to bishop takes f3 because it does go into opposite color bishops. It actually thinks it's more precise to just take back right away. And I
Right.
agree. I think this is more precise. Now with the threat of bishop takes f3, and okay, I mean the queen needs to get off of the b file. Let's say queen to c2, and then say rook takes d1, rook takes d1. And just something like bishop to d5. Just open up the threat here, right?
Yeah.
And if we could win a pawn while keeping the bishop pair, we get the best of both worlds,
Yeah, and like
right?
for example, rook b1, bishop a2. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So this is, in my mind and in the computer's mind, much more convincing. And so I should have
Yeah, yeah,
actually
that makes
challenged you to
sense.
think about that a little bit more.
Yeah.
But
It does make a lot of sense
like
though.
bishop takes f3 is -1. This is -1.6. So there is a
Right, yeah.
fairly big difference there.
But I mean,
Um,
I guess if you're confident enough that you're gonna be able to win the queenside pawns without white being able to take your pawns or trade queens by force, then you know, I don't.
mhm.
I mean, it can't be like a terrible decision, right?
Yeah,
It's
for
just
sure,
more
for sure. I mean,
forcing.
it's not a big problem. It's just you'll probably you might struggle to win this if white defends properly because it is opposite color bishops.
How
And so,
stupid is
and this is something I actually struggle with myself sometimes because I am a greedy pawn grabber. I try to find the most forcing concrete way to win the pawn instead of trying to maintain my static advantages and be patient
yeah.
and win the pawn under better conditions,
Just one final
right?
thing. How stupid is bishop f3, gf3 with the idea if bc5, there's bishop b5, and like white plays a4 next, then you don't get to win b2. And how dumb is
Ah,
this really? Like, is there
good
any way to
question. I think there's a
exploit
tactical
this?
problem because I'm seeing some like check, trade the rook, c4 that could just win tactically.
Ah, nice, nice. Yeah.
You see that? Yeah. So that's the issue there. Now that aside, if not for that, or if not for the immediate c4 also working, then that would
Ah,
be a
yeah,
good
yeah,
point.
yeah. That
Yeah.
was nice. Yeah, I didn't see that from afar, but yeah, yeah, that's clear.
If we just play something slow and allow a4, then white's fine, yeah. But
Yeah. Okay.
all right.
Makes
So,
sense.
anyways, yeah, good job with these. I think you did better with some of these than I thought you would. Not to be insulting or anything, but you were more willing to take on damaged pawn structures than I was expecting, which is good.
I'm trying. I mean,
And
I just feel like these days in my over the board games, like a lot of the sources of like I would say not like how do I explain this? The source of my like first off, I don't think there's always a well, it's hard to tell honestly. Like you'd have to like analyze like, pretty much all of my games in the last like 6 months or so, but or more specifically, in recent couple months.
mhm.
It's I just feel like I see ghosts a lot of time at the board, and my decision making is just been going downhill. Like it used to be quite good in some of the better tournaments I played this year, but now that I'm sort of in a small slight burnout phase, I just feel like I'm not making the right decisions, not playing as cleanly as I should be.
Hmm.
So
All right. Well,
it's
I
really
mean,
hard to
hopefully doing
tell.
this type of practice can help you
Yeah.
improve in that area. And I guess just as I said this at the beginning too, but it's not just calculation that you need to
Hmm.
do, right? To come up with the right decision, you also need to evaluate.
Yeah.
And so just try to make sure every line you calculate, right? And you attach an evaluation to that, and you just
Yeah.
kind of compare your options. Like I know it's all sounds obvious, but um And it sounds like stuff that you'd kind of do naturally, but be very intentional about it, right? Be very
Right.
intentional. Maybe even try to give, and I do this sometimes, like I'll try to give a computer evaluation to a line that I'm thinking about, right?
Yeah, I do, because I do
I'll try
analyze
to
things
assign a
very often,
concrete number to it.
right? Like
Do you do that at all?
honestly, like yeah, I mean, like to be completely honest, like stockfish or like just engines in general have taught me so much about chess. So I just kind of like
Oh yeah.
use
I
it a
mean,
lot.
it
Yeah,
has for a
back
lot
when I
of people in
started.
the modern
Yeah,
era. Hmm.
but yeah, I'll try to work on
We
that.
try to become the computers, right? That's what chess is
Hmm.
basically
Things
at this point.
I want to avoid that mindset. I don't want to always, look for the most precise. I just want to like guarantee the victory on the score sheet, right? That's my main goal these days. I don't want to,
Sure.
concern myself with
That's certainly the case
precise science.
if you have like I'd say like a winning advantage, right? You want to do what's simplest, the path of least resistance, right?
Hmm.
Avoid, counterplay. You don't always want to go with the engine move in a better position. You want to go with the simplest approach.
Yeah, and
Um, I get
yeah.
that to some extent.
So for
But that can also lead you astray, right?
yeah.
Like
Hmm.
if you go with the simple approach, but it's like +1 instead of +2, okay, now you're letting your opponent, get one step closer to equalizing. So
Right.
it's yeah. I try to be precise when I have time. Of course, in like Blitz and Rapid, you play a lot more based on intuition, you play much more practically, and you make practical decisions because you don't have the time to calculate very deeply. But if you're playing like a 90-30 game or something, then you should try to be as precise
Hmm.
as you can, I would say. Um,
Yeah.
at least that's my advice. Practicality. You be practical the lower on time that you are, right? The
Hmm.
the more time you have, the more you should try to be
Yeah.
precise. But,
And for
all right,
yeah, just one small
what's
little
up?
thing.
Sure.
What like assuming that you are like at least, somewhat interested in seeing how my next tournament will go, since it's actually gonna be my last weekender tournament in like at least a couple of months according to my schedule, at least because I don't have anything
Oh,
planned for
really?
January at the moment. Uh,
Okay.
so which is unusual. Usually I have at least one a month, right? I'd like travel somewhere with a
Hmm.
friend, but I don't have anything confirmed yet. But anyway, since I am going to be playing stronger players there, if you do decide to check it out some point, check out the games, is it useful for you as as a coach to because I've never seen you I've never seen you really talk about this, but annotating games, is it useful for you if I annotate my games beforehand, or is it more useful to just discuss them during the lesson? Because either or works for me. I'm just wondering what's more efficient for you and what do you think?
Oh,
Like, is it
absolutely. I
better for me
mean,
to
if
verbalize
you
my
have
thoughts
the
or to
time to
write it down?
annotate games, if you have the time to annotate your games, that would absolutely be a good thing to do. Uh, Not only for me, but for yourself, right? And
Yeah.
you want to go over it. You should certainly go over your games with the computer, right? And
Hmm.
um
Well, I do that every time,
like
of course,
yeah,
but
good. And I think it's good to annotate them, and it does help me if we do go over the games in our lessons because I can prepare, right? If I see that there's a mistake that you're making in your thinking process or something like that, then I can prepare to, what to tell you or
yeah,
prepare
rather
some
than just
similar
like,
examples.
so it's more clear for you what my thought process is at X and Y moment, right? That makes
Yeah.
sense.
And,
I
if
can,
you annotate it like the day after or something, you're going to remember more clearly what you were thinking about. Or
yeah, I
even
can do
same
that. I
day,
mean,
right? If you have time between the rounds,
I
you
remember
can try to.
when after right after COVID is right after COVID when the club opened over a year ago, when OTB just restarted, I used to annotate all my games in my Lichess studies, but I kind of stopped that because I started playing way too much
Did you
and
make
got
those
lazy.
public and show them to people, or did you?
Uh, well, I just had him there. I mean, I have all my games public just because I feel like it. I mean,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
yeah,
I mean, I think that's
I
a
can
good habit
certainly
to
start
stay
annotating more.
doing.
I can certainly start annotating more of my games.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that would be helpful for me, and I think it would be a good practice for you, and it would help you get the most out of learning from your games.
Mm-hmm.
So
All right,
awesome.
it
So
sounds like
is
a plan.
that
So
going
I
to
guess
be this
after that,
weekend or next weekend?
well, it's gonna be on this weekend of the 16th and 17th. So after that,
Okay, so next
the week
weekend.
after, yeah,
Sure.
and probably schedule something after that.
All right.
Yeah,
Sounds good. Yeah, send me a study with your games. And definitely I'll try to follow along and see how you're doing. If trying to think next weekend, I'm gonna be gone next weekend. I'm actually playing in a tournament of my own.
no, cool.
So I'm not gonna really be able to
Well, that's fine.
I
It's a
don't know how
small.
much
It's not a big
availability
one.
I'll have to give you
It,
advice or things during the tournament, but
yeah, no, that's totally fine. This is just like a small club event. I mean, it is going to be, FIDE rated and all that, but it's it's just like 5 games. Play players similarly rated players.
hey,
And just
that's good. Try to get off to a
yeah,
good
try.
start so that you get to play some higher rated players and they, aren't stuck playing the 1800s the whole time.
Yeah, it is definitely a little nerve-wracking because I know who I'm going to be playing against and like you know
Mhm.
have a bit of history of some
But
of
that
them.
helps you prepare for them, right? I mean, if you've played them before, you can do some better opening prep and
Yeah,
know what to
well,
expect. So,
speaking of that, like it's it's if you ever play in my region, like it's not something that you can really rely on most of the time because I have tried,
okay, people mix it up all the time.
or and they just know like everyone at my club and everyone around me knows that I do this sort of thing, so they just avoid it and play random line. But that
Uh,
doesn't phase me or anything. Like
yeah.
it's not like I'm
You have you become known as the theory guy, as the prep guy?
well, I mean, I try not to be because I don't think I'm as good as people claim make me out to be. But no, I mean it's interesting because I am definitely comfortable with my general opening prep. Like I don't rely on specific prep before the game. Like I don't need to memorize a bunch of chessable lines
Mhm.
or whatever. But
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
that's good. Um,
yeah, I
okay.
try.
Well, I got to get out of here. I was
Yeah.
supposed to have another lesson starting at 7 actually, so
Okay.
I've gone
Yeah.
a bit too long. But
All right. Cheers,
all
and I'll
right.
see you
Yeah,
next time.
thanks for. All right, sounds good.